We're back with a Fox News alert on new video near the Strait of Hormuz. Moments ago, CENTCOM posted this footage of the U.S. intercepting an Iranian-flagged cargo ship. President Trump says a Navy destroyer stopped the vessel by blowing a hole in its engine room after it ignored repeated warnings to stop.
Motor vessel Tosca, vacate your engine room. Vacate your engine room. We're prepared to subject you to disabling fire.
Yeah, we've been watching some real skirmishing in the Gulf. U.S. naval blockade of all Iranian-flagged, Iranian-owned ships coming or going to Iranian ports using that Strait of Hormuz. And as you just saw in that video, there have been skirmishing. Most of the ships have turned away when the U.S. Navy has warned them to go away.
For 6 straight hours, the warnings kept coming. A massive Iranian cargo vessel, nearly 900 feet long, was cutting through the Arabian Sea on a direct course toward a U.S. naval blockade. American warships had it on radar, weapons trained, every movement tracked. The ship was making roughly 17 knots and showed no sign of turning away. Every warning was ignored. Then came the command no engine crew ever wants to hear. Motor vessel Tosca, vacate your engine room. We are prepared to use disabling fire. Seconds later, the shooting started. It was April 19th in the Arabian Sea. Morning light was still spreading across the water as another day of blockade operations got underway. For weeks, U.S. warships had enforced a hard line across the region, stretching from near the Iran-Pakistan border toward the northeastern coast of Oman. It was a barrier of steel on open water, silent, patient, and effective. And up to that point, it had worked. More than 24 ships had already been turned away. No firefights, no boarding actions, no dramatic confrontations. Vessels would approach, spot the destroyers ahead, hear the warnings, and change course. Some backed off immediately, others needed repeated calls, but in the end, they all turned around, until this one. To the crew aboard the U.S. destroyer, the routine was familiar by now. A radar contact appears, communications are established, the vessel is warned. The vessel turns away, another long day at sea. But this contact was different from the moment it appeared. Radar picked up a fast-moving ship holding between 16 and 17 knots, driving straight toward restricted waters. No drift, no hesitation, no signs of confusion, no reduction in speed, no course change. Identification came quickly, an Iranian cargo ship, enormous, blacklisted, and heading directly for the blockade line. Officers studied the track. They checked the speed, they checked the heading, they checked it again. At that speed and on that course, this was not a navigation mistake. This was not a vessel that had wandered off course or misunderstood its position. This ship knew exactly where it was, and that meant one thing. This was not a routine encounter anymore. This was a challenge. The first radio warning went out, clear, direct, and professional. Stop your vessel. You are approaching a U.S. naval blockade. You are in violation of blockade restrictions. Reverse course immediately. No reply. The warning was repeated on another frequency, still nothing. Another transmission followed, then another. Different channels. Full broadcast strength. Every effort was made to establish communication. Nothing. And that silence mattered, because this was not a technical problem. The Tosca's radios were not dead. The crew was not asleep. The bridge had heard the calls. They simply chose not to answer. Not even a broken acknowledgement. Not even static mistaken for a response. Just complete silence while the ship continued forward. That told the Americans everything they needed to know. This decision had been made long before the vessel ever reached the blockade. Somewhere out in the Arabian Sea, the crew had already chosen their course. They had decided they were going through. They had decided the warnings would not change anything. And maybe somewhere in that calculation, they had assumed the U.S. Navy would blink first. Hour after hour, the distance closed. Every mile the Tosca advanced was another mile of deliberate defiance. Every ignored warning pushed both sides closer to the point where words would no longer matter. Then at 13:08 hours, something changed. The ship slowed, from 17 knots down to around 6. But it did not stop. It did not turn. It did not reverse. It simply eased back as if testing the line one last time, measuring how far it could go before the situation crossed into something irreversible. By then, the answer was already forming aboard the destroyer. 6 hours, multiple warnings, multiple frequencies, full communication effort, no compliance. Now the warship moved. Not away, not cautiously, not to create distance. It closed in. The time for radio calls was over. Loudspeakers came alive, their broadcasts carrying across open water with enough force to shake windows aboard a nearby ship. Visual warnings followed. Flares burned bright against the daylight sky, unmistakable signals that needed no translation. Then came the final announcement, calm, controlled, and absolute. Motor vessel Tuska, vacate your engine room. Vacate your engine room. We are prepared to use disabling fire. Anyone who has served at sea knows what that means. That is not routine language. It is not pressure. It is not bluff. When a warship issues a disabling fire warning, the conversation is almost over. On the destroyer, the sounds of readiness filled the air. Gas turbines humming, wind tearing across the deck, crew at stations, weapons aligned. Everything had shifted. For a moment, there was still a chance. The Tuska could stop engines. It could acknowledge the warning. It could do anything at all, to show it understood the reality closing in around it. It did none of those things. Then came the whistle, long, sharp, final, the kind of sound that tells every sailor on deck that the warning phase is finished, that the next act will not be spoken. The destroyer made one last maneuver, moving toward the Tuska's starboard quarter and angling off the stern. This was not random positioning. It was deliberate, because the target was never the bow, never the bridge, never the hull for dramatic effect. The target was the engine room. On a ship like the Tuska, that space sits aft, below the stack and behind the main superstructure. Deep inside that section is the machinery that turns fuel into motion, the systems that push a vessel thousands of miles across open ocean. Hit that space correctly and the ship doesn't have to sink. It just stops, dead in the water, exactly where you want it. The destroyer's fire control systems locked in. On a modern warship, a shot like this is not guesswork. At those ranges, against a ship moving at reduced speed, disabling a specific section is a matter of calculation, not chance. Then the order came. Fire. The first round from the 5-inch gun thundered across the sea, then another, then another. Each one aimed with the same purpose, each one driving the situation from warning into consequence. Smoke began rising from the Tuska. Its speed started falling almost immediately. 17 knots, then less again. This giant vessel, stacked with containers, loaded from Asian ports, and driven across thousands of miles of ocean toward Iran, was losing power fast. Not because its crew had decided to stop, because the machinery that kept it moving had been knocked out. And that distinction mattered. One bad shot here could have turned the whole incident into disaster. Fire spreading, structural damage, casualties, escalation. But the rounds struck where they were meant to strike. The propulsion system was finished. The vessel's movement faded towards zero. Commercial tracking systems reflected the same reality in simple maritime language, not under command. At sea, those words are final. A ship listed as not under command has lost the ability to maneuver. It cannot steer effectively. It cannot accelerate. It cannot alter course. It cannot escape. It belongs to the water now. The Tuska, having left Chinese ports, passed through major Asian shipping routes, crossed the Arabian Sea, approached a U.S. blockade at speed, ignored 6 hours of repeated warnings, and refused a final loudspeaker command, was going nowhere. The blockade had held, but the operation was not over, because a disabled cargo ship in international waters is not a finished problem. It is the beginning of a new one. The crew had been uncooperative. The ship was heavily loaded. The cargo was still unknown. That is when the situation moved to another level. The call went out for the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. Aboard nearby amphibious ships, Marines had already been standing by, watching events unfold and waiting for the order to move. Now that order came, and what they were about to do was not simple. Boarding a container ship is nothing like boarding a tanker. A tanker gives you open deck space, flat surfaces, visible pathways, clearer movement. A container ship is a maze. Stacked containers rise like metal walls. Narrow gaps create choke points. Shadows between cargo rows become hiding places. If you insert high, you are exposed. If you move low, you move blind. Every angle is a problem. Every corner can conceal a threat. And the Marines knew it. A ship like this can become a battlefield in seconds if the crew chooses to fight. Still, the boarding teams went in. They approached the disabled vessel, secured entry points, and moved systematically through the ship, deck by deck, compartment by compartment, clearing spaces and taking control. And then came one final twist. The same crew that had ignored hours of warnings did not resist the boarding. Not once, no gunfire, no ambush, no last stand. The ship was cleared. The crew was detained. Control was established. What had begun with a single radar contact racing toward the blockade ended with U.S. forces standing on the bridge of an Iranian cargo ship in the Arabian Sea, with the vessel fully secured. The ship had been stopped. The crew had been taken. The blockade had held. But one question remained, and it was the one question that mattered most. What was inside the containers? The Tuska had come out of Shanghai. Before that, Macau. It passed through Singapore and was heading toward Iran's primary port near the Strait of Hormuz. Its ownership trail ran through sanctioned entities and shell company layers designed to hide who really controlled it. And inside that ship sat thousands of sealed containers, locked, unopened, uninspected, each one a question mark. And that answer could not be found at sea, not properly. You do not fully search a cargo vessel of that size in the middle of open water. To know what is really on board, the containers have to be unloaded at port one by one with cranes, inspection teams, secure facilities, and time. None of that exists in the middle of the Arabian Sea. So even after the guns fell silent, even after the boarding teams secured the vessel, the biggest mystery remained untouched. Somewhere inside those steel boxes was the real reason this ship had pushed forward through 6 hours of warnings and straight into the line of U.S. warships. The vessel was stopped. The crew was captured. The blockade remained intact. But the truth inside that cargo may have been the beginning of the real story, not the end.